Our next speaker is Dr. Tom Magstadt, who has a PhD in International Studies from John Hopkins University. He's a retired professor who has taught here at UMKC, I think over 10 years ago. He's in this room at the University of Nebraska, at the Air War College at KU, and he was formerly a CIA analyst, so he brings a lot of experience to the field of international studies. So,
thank you very much, Ira. Well, I've been on quite a few panels in cities from Chicago to Moscow, and I got to say I haven't been on one that's more interesting than this one has been. These guys are pretty much, and Lucky and Mitch and John, have stolen my thunder. I don't have a whole lot to add, and I wouldn't subtract anything from what's been said here. I suspect that everybody in this room agrees that the war, whatever you want to call it, John, was a mistake. I mean, George W. Bush didn't wake up one morning and realize that he'd accidentally ordered the invasion of Afghanistan or an attack on Baghdad. In that sense, it wasn't a mistake. It was intentional. But in a larger sense, and I know that's what you meant too, it's been a colossal blunder, but characteristic, not out of character at all. All right? I mean, one of the things that I've done for years is to look at our foreign policy and try to make sense of it. So I haven't had much success. Neither have they. Exactly. So, yeah, so if I seem a little more confused than the average bear, that's because I am. No, none of it makes any sense. I mean, we asked about the legacies of Iraq. Plural, which is good. I'm glad that it's phrased that way, because there are many legacies. There's a legacy, of course, for Iraq, and there's been a lot of many good points made about that, and first-hand experience, which most Americans don't even hear from you guys who were there. We don't hear them. I spent a little time on at Leavenworth working on a project with the Army one summer. And one of the officers told me about an incident where he nearly shot a little boy who was 10 years old because he had a toy gun. He said he was a split second from shooting him. Because it was that dangerous. And a kid with a gun, with a real gun, is just as dangerous as an adult with a real gun. And you have a split second to react. As it was, he kicked him in the groin, but the kid lived. It was a toy gun. Yeah. Let's see, where was I? Legacies. Yeah, it's hard for us, it's impossible for us to judge the legacy of this war in Iraq for Iraqis. Just like it's impossible for us to begin to understand, to commence to understand what the legacy for Vietnamese people was. They lost at least 3 million. The government there says 4 million in the war. People, half of them at least, were civilians. Who knows what the numbers are? Who really knows? But it's a lot. It's a really, really, really big number. So how can we ever judge the impact on another country? And we're there. We don't belong there. You know, it's not our country. And we're killing people there. And we're killing civilians. And we can't help it. It's not the soldiers' fault. They're put in harm's way all the time. And they're told, you know, given orders. They're doing what they're told to do, of course. And they're trying to stop troops of ours. Untold number of Vietnamese. So again, the legacy. Who's to say that there'll be any legacy of this for this war? And that's the question. Will we learn anything? So that ties in with the lessons. Okay, the whole question of lessons. will we learn anything? Do we ever learn anything? And if we don't, then there's no legacy. The legacy is the same thing as the lesson. It's just a different word. At CIA, by the way, CIA gets a bad name all the time because, you know, there are these covert operations that CIA gets involved in because the orders come from on high, and so you do it. I wasn't involved in any of that. I was an analyst. I had a desk job. But I can tell you for a fact that there are an awful lot of people at places like CIA who spend an awful lot of time looking at what is called lessons learned. And I am here to tell you that the level of frustration over the fact that the people there learn the lessons, but the people downtown don't, it couldn't be much higher. Or the roof would blow off the place. Oh, there are people in the United States government that know perfectly well how stupid some of these military interventions and so forth have been. They know it very well. It's just that they don't make the decisions. That's driven by other things. We could talk about economics all night if we wanted to get into that.
You want to?
We could. We could. I don't want to. But we could. So I'm going to shut up pretty soon here. So it remains to be seen if there are any lessons to be learned. I just want to do one thing if I can make it happen here. All right. And then if I want to move it, I can just go through the... Okay. All right. I'm going to go through this very quickly to get to what I want to do here. No, it's not really. F5.
Oh no, you just press arrow button forward now. That's good.
Okay. All right, that's fine. All right. We've already done that. Number of wounded, you guys have talked about it. Oh, here's something. The good news, it's over. Bad news is not over when it's over. And that's been a lesson. That was a lesson in Vietnam. It was a lesson, of course, it is a lesson in Afghanistan, and certainly a lesson in Iraq. A Koppel talking on Ted Koppel in just a couple months ago, interview, televised interview. I realize you can't go into any detail, but I'd assume that there's a healthy CIA mission here. I would assume that JSOC may still be active in this country, the Joint Special Operations. You've got FBI here, you've got DEA here. Can you give me sort of a menu who all falls under your control? You're actually doing pretty well. We're authorized to talk about half this stuff. We're not going from there at all. Those numbers, again, have been, John talked about the numbers, and they range, as he said, from the low, from 110,000 perhaps to all the way up to 1 million. Imagine the number of people that have died there. If Country X dropped a bomb on, say, Columbia, Missouri, or Topeka, Kansas, that brings us a little bit closer to home, wiped out the entire population. How would we want to respond? How would we react? Think of Nagasaki, Hiroshima. You know, think of Pearl Harbor. Whoops. Now a little bit about Iran. As threats go, Iran's a perfect storm. It can be viewed, it can be treated by our political leaders as a triple threat. We can say, well, a terrorist threat, threat of nuclear war, religious threat, you know, the whole clash of civilizations thing, and they call us Satan America, and they call Israel terrorist Zionist state, and so on. So it's a perfect storm. If you're really looking for the next place to start a war, it could be Iran. All right, I'm just about done. I've taught international relations for years, and so I'm always looking for some sort of principles and some sort of an axiom here and there. And here's one. This is from Machiavelli, basically. It's not Machiavelli, it's just my idea of what Machiavelli would say if he were here tonight.
fight when and only when necessary. I'm not a pacifist, but I don't believe in fighting stupid wars, and I don't believe in fighting wars without some idea how you're gonna, what you want to accomplish, that it's actually doable, and how you're gonna get out. Fight smart, not often. We've done it the other way around. We fight often and not smart. Never lose. A war is something you never really want to lose. And the corollary is don't fight if you can't win. And we've done that time and time again. We just don't acknowledge when we lose. Vietnam's the obvious case where we definitely lost in every way conceivable. I want to say one other thing about wars that we fight and don't win. There are victors in wars. If you think for a minute about wars that we have fought or any other country has fought, just wars in general, think of the winners. Think of who really wins. Ask yourself if anybody ever really wins, or how rare it is that there's really a winner. We have victors and we have the vanquished, but that's not the same thing. If you turn the question over and look at it from a different angle and ask yourself who really wins, we've won one war unequivocally since World War II, I would submit. One war. It's a trick question. If I were to ask you which one, yes?
The Cold War.
It's the Cold War. It's the one we didn't fight. It's the one we did not fight. I mean, this is a country, this is our big adversary, this superpower. They had nuclear weapons. They had armies, you know, they'd taken over Eastern Europe. We thought they were trying to take over the world, and so on. Godless communism, that's what they represented to us. And yet what we did was just talk and talk and talk with them. And then we made agreements with them. We said, you know, we won't launch first if you don't. Okay. You could actually talk to them. And imagine that. They weren't crazy. They didn't want to start a nuclear war either. Gee. Big surprise. Lessons of the Iraq War. Support our troops, not our defense contractors. That would be one. Don't fight others' battles. Stay home, prosper, and democracy will sell itself to the world. The way we're doing it isn't working, folks. It's just not working at all. Set a good example. Avoid killing innocent people in the name of democracy and freedom, because that really gives democracy and freedom a bad name. And then finally, for all of us, conserve more, consume less. A pension for gas-guzzling SUVs is a damn poor reason to fight a war. I know we're not supposed to talk about opportunity costs, but the Center for Defense Information places the ultimate cost of 2 wars since 9/11 at somewhere between 4.7 and 5.3 trillion. Stiglitz, Joseph Stiglitz, an economist I respect, called Iraq our $3 trillion war. Imagine what a fraction of that amount of money spread around in a place like Iraq or Afghanistan could do to help those people and to create goodwill. We have lost so much soft power. We don't understand that power takes all kinds of forms. And it's only one form is hard power, is military power. There's soft power too. And that's the stuff you can get on the cheap. If people like you, they might just do what you think is a good idea once in a while. Because they trust you. And because they want to be on the same side. Okay. I'm done. There's a little. This is from, this is a cartoon that a guy does on opensalon.com. So it's just free. It's just his gift to anybody who sees things the way he does. All right. I'm done. Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.